Yo, what's up folks, TrevorTCG here with new modern Infect. Rex is here, we've got a brand new toy to play with. I'm going to go through the deck and all the different card choices as we go through, but Infect is back. Kicking it off with the creatures, and we'll get to our new favourite friend, but first up we've got 4 copies of Noble Hierarch. Still one of the best cards in the deck. That exotic trigger, getting you the mana early, it's still just so efficient. Now, okay, immediately we're going to talk about our new favourite modern all-star. Venerated Rotpriest is really good. It gives the deck a lot of resiliency. If you're not familiar, whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter. Now this is your spells and your opponent's spells, so every time they play a kill spell, trigger. Every time you play a pump spell, trigger. You got evasion, trigger. And of course in multiples, you get really crazy. So let's talk about firstly what we're not doing. We're not going all in on Storm. The one thing Venerated Rotpriest does is makes you more consistent. It makes you more durable. Being a 1/2, another creature. Again, all your opponent's kill spells, getting them poison counters means that later on in the game, it's much easier to finish them off. And it gives the deck a bunch of resilience. Now, what I don't want to do is throw that all away to play a glass cannon build. Instead of playing like, alright, taking advantage of the resiliency we get with Rotpriest, go all in on this like Storm kill. Not really about it. I think it makes like traditional blue-green Infect really strong. But I don't think it's worth trying to go and Storm off. Even though that is super fun, and that's really cool, and that's a sweet thing that it's around. But hey, that's not what we're about here. And obviously, you can turn 2 kill already, which is one of the reasons I think trying to do Storm stuff with Rotpriest is bad, because you've got a turn 2 kill already in the deck. Why glass cannon yourself to go get a new one? I think black-green's a little too slow for the format as it stands at the moment, but I think blue-green is a really strong choice now with the addition of Rotpriest. And Rotpriest is changing a little bit on how you build the rest of the deck. We still have, of course, our 4 copies of Listener Elf. Nothing else to say here. You still want your 1 mana, 1/1 Infect. Hey, the one thing about Rotpriest is that your pump spells aren't going to work to get your opponent a bunch of poison counters. They do get you more, and obviously if you've got both these in play, you put the pump spell on the Listener Elf, then hey, you get an extra poison counter there, and that's sick. But yeah, we still got our Listener Elves, and then to the end we also still, of course, have the mighty unblockable Blighted Agent in the deck here. Still so good. It's 2 mana, it's a little slow, it can be hard to protect, and especially without Noble Heart, can be quite hard to protect, which means it's not perfect. But it is still really strong, unblockable still nuts. So hey. The other thing, which is a little bit of a hedge that we're playing in the creature slot, alongside Venerated Rotpriest, is a single copy of Spellskite. Obviously, it's been in and out of the Infect deck a bit. Sometimes you play it on the sideboard. I'm tempted to put another one on the sideboard. This is currently the only one on the 75. I played a game at the weekend versus Burn. I just played the Axion Mega Modern. Being able to go, alright, I have these 2 in play. You want to try and burn me out, I'm going to redirect to Spellskite, and hey, you get poison counters as well. So good, and then being able to protect these guys is excellent. So yeah, we've got a Spellskite, could play on the board. We're not trying to like wombo combo, assemble multiple Spellskites with Rotpriest in play, but hey, we got another one. Alright, into spells. Let's start with Scale Up, and along with that, we'll also include Might Evolved Corrosive. So Scale Up, until end of turn, target creature you control becomes a 6/4, and then obviously has Overload, and then Might Evolved Corrosive, +2/+2, and then if you play it during the main phase, +4/+4. And these are your kind of like your, alright, if I have 2 of these, your opponent's dead kind of effects. Right? Not quite true if you've got double Might Evolved Corrosive, and obviously these don't stack together, but hey, in combination, this is 10 points of damage. And they're still so good. Like I said, you already have the turn 2 kill in the deck. You have other bits and pieces as well. These are your I'm just gonna kill you cards. One of the other things, we do play some free spells in the deck, and we've got 4 copies of Mutagenic Growth. Did I mention that Rotpriest is a 1/2? You play Rotpriest, your opponent's like, okay, cool, I'm going to bolt it, and all of a sudden you're like, cool, take a poison counter, take another one, this lives, and you're off to the races. Actually really strong. The Mutagenic Growth is what we're talking about. Obviously it's free, it's great, there's not tons to talk about here, but the interaction with Rotpriest is really nice, and one of the reasons why actually, like, 1/2 body as well, which I didn't talk about before, is just not being able to not just dying to Ren 6, not just falling over, and also making you a little bit better versus cards like Fury, where normally, like, maybe one pump spell wouldn't normally save you, but now it does, when you've got multiple things in play. It's super nice. Moving on, the other big pump spell we have here is a single copy of Become Immense, +6/+6, it's Delve. We're only playing one, we're not all in it. It's been a long time since we've had like a Taxian Probe and the like in the format, but we've got one, it's still great. And our other kind of big pump spell, which is obviously also protection, we have 4 copies of Vines of Vastwood. Green, target creature can't move the target spell abilities your opponent controls. Yours or your opponent's, to be fair. And then +4/+4. It's been one of the best cards in the deck for a super long time. But with the addition of Rotpriest, where even if you're just protecting your creatures, they're still getting poison counters, it's even better. What do you know? Vines are sick. Yeah, great, excellent. The green can actually be a little bit awkward sometimes. We're playing a Yavimaya, we'll get into that a bit later. But yeah. And so you have a lot of choices. You have things like Blossom Defenses. What I've chosen to go through here is 2 copies of Snakeskin Veil. If you're unfamiliar, target creature gets a +1/+1 counter and hexproof. Is really strong. You know, that +1/+1 counter does stick around. One thing this deck does is that you're not as all in on just like, okay, I want to assemble 10 points of Infect on one turn. And this adds up, which is nice. Obviously, the effect to give hexproof, great. And then, yeah, 1 mana. Playing it over something like Blossoming Defense, assembling 10 points of Infect in one turn is really hard. With Rotpriest being able to like trigger and give you some extra bits and points of Infect, being able to kill them more turns is much more consistent, and so I think Snakeskin Veil is slightly better at the moment. Now, depending on how the format looks, I normally like to play 2 evasion spells in the main deck, and occasionally I'll play a third one on the sideboard. Traditionally, I've been much more of a fan of Distortion Strike, but this is another kind of a little bit of a hedge towards Rotpriest. So we're not doing any major sacrifices to our deck building, but with just some slight tweaks. Slip Through Space, the ability to draw a card rather than have that rebound effect, is a kind of a shout out to, hey, we want to play a bunch of effects that target our creatures. It gives you that unblockable, it gets you a card deeper, which is excellent, and then we'll draw you towards other spells you can cast now. More Rotpriest triggers, etc. It is very close. It's a little bit more flexible. But I think if I was at a point where I was like, I think I want the 3rd protection spell on my sideboard, I might play Distortion Strike. I flip-flop between the 2. I think they're both excellent, but at the moment, Slip Through Space, just try and draw you to more effects that will target straight away. And then also, yeah, towards your pump spells. Who doesn't like drawing cards? The last spell to round us out here, 2 copies of Spell Pierce. We're not playing any removal in the main deck, but 2 Spell Pierce kind of catches everything. It's great as interaction versus other combo decks, whether it's something like Creativity. I Spell Pierced a bunch of Rhinos at the weekend, that was great. Obviously does protect your creatures as well. Excellent. Planeswalkers, like Spell Pierce the Renin 6, Spell Pierce their Amulet of Vigor. There's all sorts. It's great. Into the mana. The mana's fairly straightforward. We've got 9 fetches. I've got 4 Windswept Teeths. I've gone for 3 Misties and 2 Verdants. But yeah, 9 green fetches. Followed by 3 copies of Breeding Pool. Again, this is all pretty scripted. I'm playing I'm opting to go with 1 forest at the moment. If Blood Moon was a little bit more prevalent, I might play 2, but you're fairly good with 9 fetches to be able to fetch the first forest early. A Dryad Arbor. The Dryad Arbor. I flip-flop on this a lot. At the minute, I'm still playing it, but I'm like, if this was a forest, sometimes you draw it and you're like, if this was any other land in the deck. But it is still super useful. Getting a blocker out of nowhere is great. Getting a card against an Edict, stopping it's not like the Liana of the Veil still getting played a ton, but hey. But being able to find a threat to finish your opponent off with normal damage, especially if they get greedy, is actually super useful. You can do things like trap your burn opponents under their own Eidolon, which is super fun. But hey, yeah, because they are going to like take 9 off their fetches, so may as well punish them for it. And then rounding out the lands, so we have some utility stuff. First, you've got Yavimaya. Each land is a forest. Does maybe help your opponent out a little bit. Helps you with your fetches a little bit if you get low on life. Being able to give your colorless lands the ability to tap for green is actually really nice, which we'll get into now. 4 copies of Infect Axis. Yeah, I'm sure you were expecting these. They're still here. We're not playing any of the fancy new lands. In spite of having the Evermire, you can't consistently have it. And so it is a little bit awkward trying to use something like the new like +2/+1 land, or the land that makes toxic tokens like are kind of neat, and like, okay, maybe you could go grindy, but no. And then the last thing is 1 copy of Beseiju. Bit of a catch-all. There's a bunch of stuff that hits. It's super useful. Helps you have a little bit more interaction in your main deck for a low price. And so, let's get into the sideboard. So first up, we have 1 copy of Viridian Corruptor. 3 mana 2/2. Enter the battlefield, destroy an artifact. And then it's got Infect. Obviously, it's very awkward with your 1 copy of Spellskite. And so sometimes you will board the Spellskite out when you're boarding this in. But hey, I want a few things to kill artifacts and enchantments. And Viridian Corruptor also being able to provide you an extra short threat. Sometimes it'll kill like just like a Shardless Agent. I've played it in the main before, depending on how the meta looks. Obviously, like Hammer, stuff like that. Amulet. Yeah. It's great. Along with that, to destroy artifacts and enchantments, I've got 2 copies of Nature's Claim. Just cheap attraction. Don't want to have to spend a ton of mana for your sideboard cards, even though we have a 3 mana corruptor. But I wanted to have a couple of normal ways to kill artifacts and enchantments, as well as like, hey, this is one that also gives us initial threat, which is super, super handy. And obviously, if you get to play it Playable Hierarch to blow up like a ton of artifacts, you feel great. And then the rest of the creatures, you've got 2 copies of Kitchen Finks. One of the cool things about this version of the deck is that with Snakeskin Veil, you can actually put the counters back on the Kitchen Finks after they've persisted. And so you're like, okay, cool, it's got my on counter. And then you're like, okay, actually, I'm going to Snakeskin Veil it, put the counter back on, and now it dies again and goes to do its thing. Which is super, super sweet. It's just a hedge versus burn, potentially. It's the kind of deck that you don't have a ton against, and they often have a really good matchup against you post-board. And so having a couple of little hedges, yeah. 2 copies of Kitchen Finks, gain some life. Next up, a couple of copies of Veil of Summer, Thoughtseize Fatal Push, and yeah. Pretty self-explanatory here, but 2 copies. So, I actually have a split here. I want to play some more sideboard counter spells. Spell Pierce, obviously, again, is a bit of a catch-all. Flusterstorm is a bit more unique. I played Flusterstorm at the weekend when I was playing at Axiom, but I think that I would potentially cut this Flusterstorm for another Spell Pierce and just have the ability to go up to 4. There are positions where Flusterstorm is amazing, and I wanted to have like a little bit of a hedge towards those, but there are points where you're like, that's like a Leyline Binding, or that's a Fable, or that's a Wrenn 6. And like, actually, I would just have the Spell Pierce. So I played the Flusterstorm as a bit of a hedge. I would probably play 2 Spell Pierces going forward in the future. We also have some creature interaction, and because we're in blue and green, we are playing Dismember. Just as cheap as you can get, like 1 mana. Costs you some life, but hey, yeah. And then, rounding things out, firstly, 2 copies of Shaper Sanctuary, and this, one of my most played sideboard cards in Magic at the moment, both in paper and on Arena, just because the decks I send to play. But whenever a creature you control becomes a target of a spell or an ability your opponent controls, you may draw a card. And it spells and abilities as well, which means things like Fury. Fury. Fury is still problematic for the deck. It has fallen out of favor a little bit, but against things like Rhinos, hey, it's still about. Decks where your opponents want to kill all your stuff, bring in Shaper Sanctuary, draw a bunch of cards, and be able to have the resources to find a kill. Yeah, it's great. And as a 1 mana green enchantment, you can get it out there faster than Thoughtseize a lot of the time. A lot of the time before they have answers to it, before it can be taken off you with Thoughtseize. Oh, the other thing is, what we're talking about, Fury is Scam is a pretty tough matchup. And so Shaper Sanctuary can help you out a ton if you can get it down before they get to tear your hand apart. And then the very last card on the sideboard, 2 copies of Grafton's Cage. Bit of a catch-all. There are points where you're like, I'd rather have, like if you play against like Living End, something like that, then obviously Cage does not help you, similarly Rhinos, but it still does a lot. It still covers a lot. It's a great hate choice at the time being. I might play like 1 in a Relic or something like that, but hey. This is where we are. The deck's really, really good. Like, it's been in a place where they keep printing cards that are really, really good against it. See, like Wrenn 6, different types of just nuts removal. It's been in a rough spot. Fury, oh gosh. But now, I think we're on the up and up. Rotpriest do a lot of game against some of those cards. There's a lot of personal preference when it comes to something like Infect as well. I do think there are a bunch of cards that are kind of set in stone, but there are some flex slots for you to tune around a little bit. If you've enjoyed this video, please do subscribe to the channel. I do a lot of kind of Explorer and Arena stuff. If you're interested in Toxic, then I have some stuff in those formats. I will also say that this is actually making like IRL deck decks, like paper deck decks, is actually why I started the channel. It wasn't necessarily going to be like, I'm going to be an Arena content creator. But I kind of wanted to throw back to like 2007, watching like people lay the cards out for deck decks on YouTube. And that's kind of where I started card gaming. So, hey, shouts out. Yeah, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Peace out.